The day had started like any other in the city, loud and chaotic, but that only made it easier for her to slip unnoticed into the crowd. Lily had learned early that silence was sometimes the only shield a child like her could have. 8 years old, deaf, and terrified of speaking, though not for lack of trying. Her world was one of gestures, signs, and the desperate hope that someone might notice before it was too late. Today, though, she had no choice but to move quickly. She had been walking outside the local grocery store when a man appeared. He claimed to be sent by her mother to help her. He knew her name. He knew she was deaf. He knew just enough to gain her trust. And for a few moments, she believed him. But as soon as she stepped past the automatic doors, something in his eyes changed. Something dark, calculating, cruel. Lily tried to pull back to run, but the man's grip was iron. His hand closed around her wrist with a pressure that hurt. But worse than pain was the growing panic inside her chest. He walked ahead, dragging her like a package, and she followed because she had no choice. Her fingers trembled, and she raised her free hand slowly at first, then faster, shaping the words she had been practicing in secret. Before we continue, tell me which city and country you're watching from. Subscribe and follow this story to the end. You won't believe what happens next. He's not my dad. The crowd moved around her in waves, oblivious. The man smiled at a passerby, pretending everything was normal. To them it was. To him, it was just a game, one he had been playing for too long. But Lily's eyes were wide with terror, darting, scanning for help that she wasn't sure even existed. Then came the engine. Jack Turner had been leaning against his motorcycle, idly adjusting his gloves, waiting for a friend who was late. The rumble of engines was nothing new, but something in this one, a staccato urgency, the way it reverberated in the lot, made him glance up. And that was when he saw her. A tiny girl, struggling, desperately trying to communicate. Her hands flew in frantic motions. Her gaze locked on him, pleading. He didn't understand every sign, but the fear in her eyes was unmistakable. He had seen fear like this before, raw and unfiltered, in a sibling long ago. He knew when to intervene. He kicked the stand down and revved the engine louder, forcing the attention of everyone nearby. Heads turned. Conversations faltered. Phones came up instinctively. And for a moment, the man leading Lily hesitated. Jack didn't move fast yet. He didn't need to. He let the crowd take notice first, creating a human stage. And then he stepped forward, positioning himself so that Lily was shielded behind him. Everything okay? He called casually, though his eyes never left the man. The man forced a smile, a mask too thin to hide the tension beneath. Yeah, she's tired. Just a little bratty today. Jack's hand brushed against his leather jacket, and he signed to Lily slowly, deliberately. Are you okay? Lily's head shook violently. Her fingers moved again, spelling out the message she had been trying to get across. He is not my dad. Jack's chest tightened. Then you won't mind letting her go, he said calmly. The man's eyes narrowed. You don't know what you're doing. I know exactly what I'm doing, Jack replied. The first shove came fast, violent. But Jack's reflexes were faster. He caught the man's wrist, twisting just enough to make him release Lily. She fell into his arms, sobbing silently, clutching the thick leather of his jacket like it was the only thing solid in her world. The sirens hadn't arrived yet, but the fear in the man's eyes was already apparent. He realized everyone had noticed. He had miscalculated. His next step was desperate, and that desperation would cost him everything. Jack held Lily tightly, his voice a steady anchor. You're safe now, he said. Then, using the limited signs he knew, he repeated it slowly. Safe. Safe. The crowd started whispering, moving closer. Phones were recording. Someone had already called the police. The man's smile vanished, replaced with pure, unmasked panic. He yanked back instinctively, tried to retreat, but the crowd's attention was suffocating. And then he ran. Jack didn't chase. He stayed with Lily, letting the man's fear carry him away. He knelt beside the trembling girl, brushing strands of hair from her face. Her eyes were wide, brimming with tears, as she tried to make sense of the chaos. A police car pulled up, lights flashing. Officers leapt out, and one of them, a young woman with kind eyes, knelt beside them. Hey, you're safe now, she said gently. But Lily didn't respond. Not yet. Jack signed again, careful, deliberate. You're safe. The officer glanced at him. She's deaf. Jack nodded. All right, the officer said. We'll handle it. Can you tell us what happened? Jack took a deep breath. She's 8. She was taken by a man pretending to be her father. He knew her name. He knew she was deaf. She was trying to tell us, but no one noticed. A translator arrived moments later, kneeling beside Lily and signing with patient, gentle movements. Slowly, Lily told her story. The store, the man, the lies, the fear. Her mother arrived moments later, frantic, calling her name. When she saw Lily safe, the woman collapsed to her knees, holding her child like she never wanted to let go again. Jack stayed in the background, letting the reunion unfold, the weight of what could have happened pressing down on him. He thought about how close it had been, how easily the world could have walked on by. And in that moment, he understood. Heroes don't always arrive with sirens. Sometimes they arrive on a motorcycle with nothing but the courage to stop. The city seemed normal again, but to Jack, nothing was normal anymore. Every honking car, every hurried footstep, every rustle of a backpack reminded him of that day. Lily's small, trembling hands, her frantic signs, the desperate eyes that had screamed in silence. He couldn't shake it. He couldn't let it go. Jack had turned down offers to forget, to move on. That wasn't how he operated. Not anymore. Because the thing about danger is that it doesn't announce itself. It hides. And if you ignore it, it will strike again. Even as Lily rested safely at home with her mother, Jack returned to the parking lot mentally. He retraced the steps, analyzed the crowd, the distance, the moments when no one looked. The man, the stranger, had seemed confident. Too confident. He had left with no sign of panic, only fleeting fear, and that was the kind that stayed hidden, lurking in shadows. Jack decided he needed more information. He called the police, and they agreed to share details, security footage, witness statements, anything that might help identify the man if he ever returned. Days passed. Weeks. Lily slowly returned to her routines, school, therapy, gestures of normal life, but the trauma left invisible marks. She flinched at sudden movements. She froze at unexpected touches. She signed fewer words, speaking less even to her mother, afraid someone would misunderstand. Her mother, exhausted and guilt-ridden, leaned on Jack for guidance, though they had only met briefly in that parking lot. Jack became a constant, silent guardian. He taught Lily subtle ways to protect herself. He showed her how to read body language, to notice when someone's intentions were off. He even started learning more sign language, hiring a private tutor so he could communicate fluently. All the while, he couldn't shake the feeling that the man would return. And then he did. It was a Tuesday morning. Jack was riding through the quieter streets, helmet on, engine low and steady, when a flash of brown jacket caught his eye. The same jacket, same build, the same baseball cap pulled low. He slowed, stopped, and watched. The man wasn't alone. He lingered near a bus stop, talking to someone on the phone. Jack didn't hear the conversation, but he knew instinctively that it was related to Lily. Jack's heart pounded. He was about to intervene, but he knew better. The last thing he needed was a public confrontation that could endanger Lily. He needed a plan. He called the police and shared what he saw. They listened, skeptical at first, but the video from the store and eyewitness statements left little room for doubt. Detectives promised to keep a patrol nearby and to track the man's movements. Jack, however, wasn't content to wait. He returned home that evening and found Lily drawing quietly in her sketchbook. Her pencil moved in careful lines, almost hypnotically. Jack sat beside her. "Hey," he said softly. She glanced up. No words, just eyes wide, wary. He signed slowly, clearly. "I saw someone today. Someone from before." Her pencil paused midair. Her eyes darted. A shiver ran down her spine. Jack leaned closer. "They might come back. We need to be ready." Her small hand reached for his, gripping tightly. No words, no sign, but he understood. Fear, yes, but also trust. The next days were a blur of preparation. Jack mapped routes. He installed small security devices around Lily's home with her mother's permission. He coordinated with the police. And every night, he thought of the moment when he would face the man again, and what he would do to protect Lily. It happened sooner than expected. A week later, Jack was driving Lily to school. The city streets were alive with morning rush. Lily sat quietly in the back, headphones on, music faint. Jack's eyes flicked to the rearview mirror, scanning for threats. There, a van, brown, nondescript, following them too closely, too deliberately. Jack's hands tightened on the wheel. He signaled to a side street, turned sharply. The van followed. Jack's mind raced. They needed a witness, a safe public area. He turned onto a street with cafes, shops, people walking dogs, children laughing. He couldn't afford to be subtle. Not anymore. The van pulled up alongside them. The driver's window rolled down. The man, Emily, he called, falsely gentle. Lily flinched, grabbing Jack's arm instinctively. Jack kept driving, slow, deliberate. Keep moving, he muttered under his breath. Don't panic. Don't escalate. Not yet. The man stepped out of the van, blocking the street ahead. He raised his hands, a mockery of calm. Jack slowed. They were trapped. You can let her go, Jack said, voice low, steady. No one needs to get hurt. The man laughed, a cruel, hollow sound. You think you can stop me? She's mine. Jack's heart raced, but his mind was sharp. He glanced at Lily. Her eyes were wide, silent, and he felt a surge of protective fury. He revved the engine, deliberately loud. Heads turned. Pedestrians froze. The man cursed, momentarily distracted. Lily behind me, Jack signed quickly. She understood instinctively, ducking down into the seat. The man lunged. Jack shifted the bike into neutral and leapt off with practiced precision, positioning himself between Lily and the man. His hands were ready, not to strike but to defend. The man advanced, quick and desperate. Jack sidestepped, grabbed his wrist, and twisted. The man yelped and stumbled, regaining balance. Step back, Jack growled. People were screaming now, phones out, shouting for help. The man froze, realizing that he was the center of attention. Panic overtook his anger. Jack didn't hesitate. He grabbed the man's arm and spun him toward the nearest patrol car. Police officers stepped forward, guns drawn but controlled, shouting commands. The man struggled, then collapsed into their custody. Lily emerged, trembling but unharmed, clutching Jack's jacket. Jack crouched beside her, brushing hair from her face. You're safe, he signed. This time, she smiled faintly, tiny relief flickering in her eyes. That evening, Jack returned home, exhausted but alert. He knew the danger wasn't entirely gone. The man had accomplices, contacts, ideas. But for now, Lily was safe, and that was enough. He thought about the quiet bravery of a child, the silent scream that had reached him. And he realized something: courage isn't loud. Sometimes, it's just a hand reaching out, a sign made in desperation. And sometimes, it takes one person willing to step into the silence to answer it. Jack wrote down notes, mapped contingencies, and started planning the next step. Helping Lily heal, teaching her strength, preparing her for a world that wouldn't always notice her. Because danger might return. But now they would be ready. The night was heavy with tension. Jack sat on his motorcycle under the dim glow of the streetlights, the engine idling low. His eyes flicked to every shadow, every flicker of movement. He had spent the last few days planning, mapping out routes, safe havens, contingency plans. Every scenario he could imagine, he had run through in his head. But nothing could have prepared him for the man's audacity. It had been 2 days since the van incident. The man, caught briefly by police, had been released on a technicality. A lawyer, a loophole, some procedural flaw. Jack didn't care. He knew the man wouldn't stop. He never did. And tonight, he would find out exactly how far the man was willing to go. Lily had been asleep for 2 hours. Her small frame lay curled under the blankets, clutching the silver motorcycle pendant around her neck. Jack peeked through the window. Everything seemed quiet. Too quiet. Then a shadow moved outside. The man. Jack's chest tightened. He slipped silently out of the house, helmet on, body low, every muscle coiled like a spring. The man stood near the driveway, looking up at the window. Jack could see him now, sneering, dangerous, confident. "Emily," the man hissed, stepping closer. Jack didn't hesitate. He revved the bike, a low growl that split the night. The man turned, startled, but recovered quickly. He dashed toward the street, thinking he could escape or pull Jack into some trap. Jack didn't give him the chance. He lunged off the bike, intercepting him mid-step. The man stumbled, recovered, and swung his arm toward Jack. A punch, wild and desperate. Jack blocked and twisted, his hands firm, but not lethal. He only wanted control. "You're done," Jack said, voice calm but full of authority. "She's not yours. Leave her alone." The man laughed, a chilling sound that made Jack's blood run cold. "You think you can stop me? She belongs with me." Jack's eyes narrowed. "She belongs with herself, with her mother, with anyone who actually cares about her. And that doesn't include you." The man lunged again, faster this time. Jack sidestepped, grabbed his jacket, spun him around, and pressed him against the hood of a parked car. The metal groaned under the pressure, but Jack didn't falter. "You won't touch her again," Jack said, leaning close. "Or I'll make sure you regret it for the rest of your life." The man struggled, writhing, but Jack's grip was like iron. "Call the police," the man spat. "They'll stop you." Jack shook his head. "Not fast enough." And then it happened. The man made one final desperate move. He lunged forward, aiming for Jack's throat. Jack reacted instinctively, flipping the man over his shoulder and slamming him onto the pavement. A gasp escaped from the shadows. Lily had awakened and was watching, silent but wide-eyed, clutching her pendant. Jack looked at her. "Go back inside," he signed urgently. She hesitated, then obeyed, retreating into the safety of the house. The man, now pinned, looked up at Jack with a mixture of fear and hatred. "You'll regret this," he hissed. Jack leaned close, his face inches from the man's. "No, you'll regret ever touching her." He backed away, but kept a firm grip on the man's wrist until the police arrived, sirens wailing in the distance. Officers jumped out, guns drawn, quickly taking the man into custody. This time, there would be no loopholes, no release. He would face the consequences of his actions. Jack finally exhaled. His hands were trembling from adrenaline, but he felt a deep, unwavering relief. Lily was safe. The next day, Lily sat at the kitchen table, drawing quietly. Jack watched her, sitting across from her, his hands folded. "You okay?" he signed slowly. She nodded, then hesitated before signing back. "Thank you." Jack smiled. "You were brave," he signed. "So brave." Lily's eyes filled with tears, but this time they weren't of fear. They were of relief. And something else, pride. Pride in herself for surviving, for staying calm, for trusting someone when the world seemed deaf. Jack leaned back, thinking of the long nights, the planning, the danger. He had faced fear before, but nothing like this. Nothing that touched someone so innocent, so pure. He had learned something important. Courage isn't loud. Sometimes it's just a hand reaching out, a sign made in desperation. And sometimes it takes one person willing to step into the silence to answer it. Weeks passed. The police investigation concluded with the man receiving a long prison sentence. Jack continued to visit Lily, teaching her more advanced self-defense techniques and sign language. They spent hours practicing, talking, laughing silently, building a trust that was unshakable. One afternoon, Lily showed Jack a drawing she had made. It was a picture of a motorcycle, a girl sitting behind a man, the two of them surrounded by swirling lines representing sound. Loud, chaotic, but safe inside their own bubble. Jack smiled. "That's us," he signed. "We survived the chaos together." Lily nodded. Her small hand reached for his. Yes, the city still moved too fast, too loud, but inside their little bubble, everything was calm. Safe. For the first time, Lily felt like she could breathe without fear. Jack knew the world would still be dangerous. He knew shadows would always linger. But he also knew that courage, silence, and trust could stand against even the darkest intentions. And Lily? She had discovered her own strength. The strength to reach out, the strength to survive, the strength to trust, and ultimately, the strength to forgive. The morning sun spilled gold through the curtains of Lily's room. She lay in bed, sunlight glinting off the silver motorcycle pendant that rested against her chest, a gift from Jack after the confrontation. For the first time in weeks, she woke without the tight knot of fear in her stomach. Jack was already up, making tea in the kitchen. The smell of strong coffee filled the small apartment. He glanced over his shoulder as Lily padded into the room in her pajamas. Her hair was messy, her eyes still heavy with sleep, but there was a calmness in her expression that had not been there before. "Good morning," Jack signed, smiling. Lily smiled back faintly. "Good morning." The two sat at the kitchen table. Her mother poured orange juice, her hands trembling slightly as she watched her daughter eat. Jack didn't need words to understand the depth of her relief. Weeks of terror, trauma, and near loss had finally begun to dissolve into something lighter. Hope. After breakfast, Jack signed to Lily. "Ready for school?" She nodded. "Yes." He paused, looking at her carefully. "Remember what we practiced. Trust your instincts. Be aware." She nodded again, and Jack felt the familiar ache of a parent's worry, even though he was not hers. He had chosen this responsibility, chosen to stay, to protect, to teach. And now, seeing her strength, he realized how much she had grown, not just physically but emotionally. At school, Lily navigated the hallways with confidence. Other children glanced at her curiously, noticing the silver pendant, noticing the small but deliberate way she carried herself. She didn't flinch at noise. She didn't shrink from crowds. She had reclaimed the world she had once feared. Jack watched from the corner of the schoolyard, leaning against a tree. He had insisted on accompanying her, just in case, but he could already tell she didn't need the shadow of protection anymore. She had internalized courage, the kind of courage that survived even silence. He remembered the first day he had met her, sitting in that busy parking lot while her hands flew desperately, pleading. That girl had seemed so fragile, and now she was strong. Later that evening, after school, Jack and Lily walked home along quiet streets. The sky was tinged with pink and orange, the air crisp with the promise of autumn. Lily held Jack's hand, not out of fear, but out of trust. "Jack," she signed suddenly, stopping mid-step. He tilted his head. "Yes." She pointed to the pendant around her neck. "Thank you." Jack smiled, his chest swelling. "You were brave." Her eyes shone, and she signed one word, brave. It was a moment of pure understanding, a connection that transcended words. Jack realized that bravery wasn't something he had given her. She had found it herself. He had only been the mirror that reflected it back. Weeks passed. Lily's routines became predictable, safe, and empowering. Therapy sessions, school, quiet play at the park, and moments with Jack. Learning self-defense, advanced sign language, and the subtle art of reading people's intentions. She was becoming more than just a survivor. She was becoming a warrior in her own right. Jack continued his nightly patrols, but now with a different purpose. He wasn't just guarding against one man. He had learned that danger lurked everywhere, and too often, the world ignored it. He started teaching others, neighbors, friends, even local law enforcement, about vigilance, empathy, and recognizing signs of distress in the silent or overlooked. Then came the day of the school exhibition. Lily's artwork was on display, a mural depicting a girl standing tall amid a swirling storm of shadows. At her side, a figure on a motorcycle, protective, strong, unwavering. Parents, teachers, and students crowded the hall, murmuring admiration. Jack stood quietly at the back, his helmet under his arm. He watched Lily explain her art through her interpreter, signing and speaking about her journey. Her voice was calm, firm, confident. She taught me to see courage. Lily signed to the interpreter. Even when no one is listening, even when everything seems lost. Courage is quiet, but it's there. Jack felt a lump in his throat. She had taken the lessons of fear, of silence, and transformed them into empowerment. And he had been privileged to witness it. That evening, Jack walked Lily home. The sky had deepened to a velvet blue, stars starting to pierce the darkness. The streets were quiet. Lily's hand slipped into his again, light and sure. "Do you think he'll ever come back?" she asked, signing, though her expression held more curiosity than fear. Jack shook his head firmly. "No, he won't." She looked up at him, a small smile playing on her lips. "I'm not afraid anymore." Jack felt the weight of relief settle in his chest. "Neither am I," he signed back. They stopped at the corner of their street. Lily looked up at the night sky. Her fingers traced the outline of the stars, tracing constellations she had learned to recognize in therapy and art. "Look," she signed, "even in the dark there are lights. You just have to see them." Jack nodded, swallowing hard. "Yes, and sometimes the light comes from inside you." For a long moment, they stood there together, silent, strong, and unbroken. A survivor and her guardian, bonded by trust and courage. Weeks later, Jack received a letter. It was small, carefully folded, and familiar. He opened it to find a photograph. Lily, standing in front of the school for the deaf, wearing her silver motorcycle pendant, smiling confidently. Alongside her, a small group of students, each with their own story of silent struggle and survival. A note accompanied the photo. "Thank you for listening when no one else did. Thank you for seeing me when the world ignored me. You showed me courage exists, even in silence." Jack read the note over and over, the words echoing in his chest. He realized that what he had done for Lily was more than protection. It was witnessing, seeing someone, believing in them, and standing with them even when the world turned away. That was the real act of heroism. Months later, Jack returned to the parking lot where it had all begun. The cracks in the asphalt were the same, the fluorescent lights flickered in the same patterns, but everything else had changed. He remembered the frantic hands, the silent plea, the overwhelming fear. And he remembered the moment he chose to act. Jack revved his motorcycle lightly, the engine purring in a way that felt like a heartbeat. He thought about all the times people ignore the quiet signals of danger. He thought about how courage can exist in the smallest, most unexpected forms. And he knew one thing with certainty. The loudest cry for help is not always heard with ears. Sometimes it is seen in eyes, felt in trembling hands, and answered by someone willing to step into the silence. Jack mounted his bike, the cool night air on his face, and rode into the city, ready to face whatever shadows lingered. Not because he had to, but because he knew the value of listening, watching, and standing between fear and the world. And somewhere, far away, Lily looked up at the stars, tracing her silver pendant with a small, steady hand, smiling. She was free. She was brave. She was heard.